This is my interview, my cultural diverse interview for our class, and who I have in front of me is Miss Catherine, and I'll be interviewing her today. So, would you like to say anything, Miss Catherine, before we get started?
Not really.
Okay.
Happy to help Christy.
Okay. Well, I talked to Ms. Catherine about confidentiality. She signed her confidentiality form right here. And she has been notified, or I told her that at any time during this interview, if you feel uncomfortable or it's a question you don't want to answer, or anytime you want to stop this interview, you have every right to, without having any adverse reactions or anything like that. Okay. So the purpose of this interview is basically to get some information from you about your cultural background. So I'll be asking you stuff about culture, what you think culture is, and you can tell me in your own words. So the first question, piggybacking on what I just said, is what is your definition of culture?
I think it's just kind of how people express themselves, come together. I work in the arts, so I know arts is really big on expression, and you see throughout different cultures different kinds of artistic expressions. So I think it's just how people get together, share with each other, express themselves.
Okay. Okay. How would you express yourself? Since you're in the arts and you see other people, what way would you express your culture?
I do some artwork. I do kind of photo collages. I also do some writing. Working in the arts, I think just like helping other people express themselves is a good way. It just kind of helps share, understand that, yeah, this is how you can kind of identify with other people, share other people. It's like even just seeing a performance together, kind of a way to express yourself.
Okay. Okay, Miss Catherine, she has a very unique last name. It's German. And so could you tell us about your German heritage?
Well, my father's side, my great-grandfather came over from Germany, and he actually settled in northeastern Ohio near the Canton area. So there's also some German on my mother's side. She's pretty much half German, half Irish background. Okay. So and there's some Welsh in there also. So yeah, so it's a lot of that German, Irish, what you get a lot in, especially in Cincinnati area. So we kind of have some. I can say I'm not a fan of sauerkraut. I never did, but we do kind of, I think by now we're kind of the fourth generation, okay. So we're pretty Americanized Germans. Okay. Yeah.
So did you have any traditions growing up in the German household?
Nothing that I would say was different than other people I knew growing up. I mean, it's just kind of traditional American, Thanksgiving, the Christmas, celebrations, stuff like that.
So are you a transplant to Cincinnati, or were you born and raised here?
I was born and raised here. Both my parents actually came to Cincinnati to go to college. So they went to the University of Cincinnati. That's how they met.
Okay. So you were born here. Yeah. Do you have any siblings?
I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Okay. And so how is your relationship?
They're pretty good. They both still live in town, so we every once in a while get together and do stuff. My sister's actually getting married next year, so I'm the maid of honor.
Oh, wow. Great. That sounds great. Okay. How do you define family?
I guess it's kind of the traditional bloodlines that, like, people who've gotten together, gotten married, have kids. Those are kind of like the tight-knit family, but, also kind of extended with the cousins. And my parents are divorced, and my dad has remarried, so I have a whole step contingent, stepbrother, two stepsisters, and all their children. So I think, there's that, but also kind of anyone that you think you're close to, kind of, your friends kind of become your family too.
Absolutely, I understand that. So, in your family, were there any gender roles, specific gender roles that you guys?
I think we were kind of a pretty equal opportunity family. My mom was a working mother. She actually, and then went back to school also, and eventually got her doctorate in education. So, yeah, in our family, both parents worked. My dad liked to cook, so he was the one who taught me how to cook. So we kind of weren't so strict.
Okay, so it was a lot of gray areas.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about education, and since you said your mom has her doctorate in education, tell me how education plays a part in your life and in your. Was that a big thing in your family?
Yeah, they were very. Both parents are well educated by definition. Like I said, my mom had a doctorate. My dad's an engineer, and he eventually went back. He had a master in engineering, and he went and got his MBA. Okay. I have a master's degree. My sister has a master's degree. So, and I work in the arts, but I do work in the education part of it. So, my mom's a college professor, administrator. My sister does some part-time teaching. So, education seems to be very part of not just getting a good education, but being part of the education field and like teaching others.
Okay. So is your master's in education as well?
It's actually in comparative studies and the arts, but so I ended up working at an arts organization in the education department. So it's like, oh yeah, this is I kind of like doing. Yeah.
Okay. So do you equivalate maybe success with education?
I think that's one way. I think continuing to learn new things. I think helps people be successful in whatever they want to do. I'm not quite the strict. Oh, you make a lot of money, you're a successful type. But I think finding something people are passionate about, like to do, and continue to learn about that and do that makes people successful in whether it's career or if maybe they want to focus on family or some kind of volunteer opportunity.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that success is not necessarily based on education, but it's what you want to do, what you feel good doing. And, okay, that makes sense to me. Okay. What is, and it may sound different, I may rephrase this, being from a German background, and like you say, you're fourth generation now, but were there any type of German meals? I know you were alluding earlier that you hated sauerkraut.
Yeah, that was probably the big one when my parents would make sauerkraut with kielbasa sausage, and I always just picked out the sausage and left the sauerkraut. But I don't think there's any others. I mean, actually, we had a lot of like spaghetti and pizza, kind of more kind of average American stuff. We ate a lot.
Okay, so it's basically Americanized, nothing out the norm. No Irish or traditionally Irish or Welsh type of dishes that were served. Okay. Did you know? How about your grandparents? Did you know much about them? Did you grow up knowing your grandparents?
I did, but 3 of them actually died when I was like kind of like 7 to 10 year old range. On my dad's side, my dad's actually the youngest, so my grandparents they were born in like the early 1900s, so they died like in the late 70s. So I was young. My grandfather on my mom's side died about that time too, but my maternal grandmother didn't die until I was like in my 20s, so she was probably the one I knew the best out of all of them.
So tell me more about that relationship. Was it a good relationship? Would you consider yourself fairly close, or?
Yeah, I would visit her every once in a while. There was times like during the summer I would go spend a week with her. She volunteered at the hospital. And she was retired at that point, so she used to always make us fudge. I just remember it always. She always had Pop-Tarts. It's like, ooh, we get to go to Grandma's and have Pop-Tarts. So.
Yeah, great. Yeah. That's great. That's a great memory, and I saw you light up when you talked about her in your memory. So that's great. Do you actively participate in any type of organized religion?
I did go to the Cincinnati Zen Center. So
tell me more about what that is.
Even though it's based in the Buddhist tradition, it's more kind of the practice of this meditation, which I find it's kind of nice to have time to kind of have reflection and kind of think about what's going on in my life and kind of not be obligated. But we do have a few Buddhist kind of ceremonies, or like the chanting is kind of based on Buddhism, but even the teacher, and it says like I'm not really strictly Buddhist, but it's kind of interesting being part of Zen. It's kind of still new to America.
Yeah. So explain to me, because I don't. It's new to me.
Yeah.
A little bit about the background about that.
Well, in Buddhism, there's kind of a whole lineage of teachers that they actually trace. They're called Zen masters, but they trace their lineage back to the Buddha. You can do that. And our grand teacher was a Korean monk who came to the U.S. In the 60s, 70s, around there, and actually started a Zen center in Rhode Island. And that's when Zen master I study with met him and started studying with him. And in the 90s, he got, they call it transition, but he became a Zen master and then kind of started Zen center. He's actually located in Kentucky, near Lexington, but he has like satellite like centers all throughout the world. So he like visits.
So what made you, I guess,
get interested? Why did I? Yeah, because I will say I was raised in a Christian family and went to church as a child. I think I just have a naturally questioning mind. So sometimes when people talk about blind faith, I'm like, why? Why? So, and it's interesting that you're allowed to have a lot of questions. In the Buddhist tradition, there's kind of like you are kind of questioning things, but it's also kind of puts a lot of burden on the self to answer these questions. Like the Zen master is not going to say, well, this is the answer. He's going to like kind of throw it back at you. So I think just for me, that's how my mind works. It's just kind of like, hey, what about this? What about this?
So your Zen master, he traveled, you said from Rhode Island, correct? Is that?
All right, he's now in actually Kentucky, Lexington. He studied in Rhode Island.
He studied in
Yeah.
Okay, he studied in Rhode Island, now in Kentucky. Now, in the Zen community, do you guys meet every week? Is there a weekly?
Yeah, we have weekly practices. We actually at the Cincinnati Zen Center, they have 2 nights. Well, it's Sunday morning and then Thursday nights you can practice. There's also a Hamilton one up in Dayton. There's a Northern Kentucky group that meets, and actually there's also a Christian meditation group that's kind of loosely affiliated. So.
Then do you have any bylaws? Is there a book, sort of like, in Christianity we have the Bible and Jewish Torah?
We call it the Dharma, the works, or sutras, the teachings of the Buddha that you can refer to. There's also what they call koan, which loosely translates as case study, where it's sometimes you might have heard of, like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Okay, so those are kind of like those questions like, what? Right? So yeah, every once in a while the Zen master will give you one kind of to think about, contemplate. So it's just kind of get your mind like, okay, because we have a lot of assumptions of what life is and what we should be doing, and sometimes we get so comfortable with that we don't realize like why do we do this? Why?
So it sounds to me like it's a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah.
A lot of self-reflection. And so what if when you come to your self-reflection and you meditating, you ask those serious questions about why or when, and you may hit that roadblock and you never know why.
Right.
So what do you do in that instance?
You can meet with the Zen master. We also have a resident teacher who's kind of like a level below. He holds what they call interviews. So basically once a month you can sit down and talk to him about that. He might he's not going to, like I said, give you here's the answer, but he might kind of ask another question or give you something else to think about to kind of work around that why. And sometimes
it's almost like parables, almost. Why did the chicken cross the road?
yeah, they are kind of like that. And sometimes you just sit there and it's like, I don't get it. And like, you can always just kind of let it go for a while and then come back to it. Like, sometimes it helps to think about something else for a while and then you're like, oh wait. And then it comes to you, like, when you're not really focusing on it.
That's interesting. Do you find that that freeing and trying to understand, do you find that more rewarding than your traditional, like you say, you grew up in a predominantly Christian? Yeah.
Well, and I think at times I do think back to that, some of the stuff I learned there, because there are similarities, like having compassion for others, kind of walking a mile in someone else's footsteps. There's that goes on to, I mean, they don't use those phrases, but yeah, I mean, they talk a lot about compassion and, you know, like understanding others too. So it does creep back in. You know, it's not like, and the resident teacher always says, you know, meditation can actually work with any religion. It's just we just happen to be in this Buddhist tradition, the way we practice it. So.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Very interesting. Just a new aspect of
yeah. And it's not like it's not a huge community, you know, but you know, it's kind of.
Do you think it's increasing?
A little bit, yeah. I think people kind of are seeking that this kind of contemplative, because I know I have one of those crazy schedules. I'm always doing this and this. I go to work. I have like 5 things I have to think about at once. So it is kind of nice to have that time to be like. Let's sit here. Maybe I'll think about that, and maybe I won't.
So is it when you go to to your, what do you guys call it?
We call it practice.
Practice.
Meditation practice.
Practice.
Yes.
So when you go to practice instead of church or Bible study.
Yeah.
So when you go to practice, are you in pews or are you sitting on the ground?
We actually have cushions.
Okay.
People sometimes sit in chairs. It's just, we want people to be comfortable because you are trying to sit still for 30 minutes. We kind of do some chanting, a little bit of sitting. Then we have a walking period just so you can get up and move around because if you're not used to sitting on a cushion for 30 minutes, you're kind of like, oh, my leg just fell asleep on me.
Oh, wow.
So, and then we do another sitting period. And usually then afterwards we kind of congregate and talk. So,
wow.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Interesting. We're going to move on just a little bit. I'm going to bring it back to your religion, but to just expand a little bit more. Do you think practicing Zen, has that affected your worldview?
I think so. I think it's just, I'm trying to think how it has, but it's kind of been a subtle, like, kind of sitting back and kind of thinking about things and not so much, even though it's self-reflective, I'm kind of thinking outward too. It's like, how am I connected to everything else and other people in my life and other things that go on in my life? So it kind of gives me time to do that too. It's not just like, oh, all me, you know. Even though I think when I started out, it was more this, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Blah, blah, blah. Now it's more like, okay, why am I here with all these other people? You know, what else do I do throughout, you know, my days? How do I connect?
Good. That's good to know and to hear that that self-reflection really does give you some insight on how you connect to other people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's great. Because I think to know yourself is very important. And you can kind of relate it to how you talk or communicate to other people. Okay. Are there roles, gender roles within your religion?
Kind of. I mean, traditionally, the Zen masters and monks have been males. I think coming to the U.S., that's kind of loosened a little bit, even though the Zen master is a male and our resident teacher is a male. There are actually, in some of the other centers, there are some females who are like teachers also. So I think for a while we did have a female abbot who's kind of more like the administrator of the center. She decided to step down, so now we have a male abbot, but I don't think it was like we have to have one or the other. It's whoever's qualified.
Okay. So it's more on qualification than gender.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think coming to the U.S. that's kind of loosened up a bit. I think in Asia there was kind of more strict male monks. They do have nuns, they call them also. Okay. But, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Wanted to ask you a little bit because living in a predominantly African American community, which is a little bit, you know, that was the segue to my next question, because being Zen and, like you said, knowing yourself and knowing how to relate to others and how you're connected to others leads me to why you, not why you chose to live in a predominantly African American community, but how did that come about?
I actually didn't really think too much about it. I was like looking for a house, and I was I'm looking north side area, and then I saw this house in Cumminsville. And it's like, I have to admit, I didn't really think about that. Oh, Cumminsville is mainly an African American community. It's like, I kind of like this house, and it's in my price range.
Right.
But, yeah, it's been interesting, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, all my neighbors are nice. It's not like anyone was like, oh my God, she's white. But I mean, I think all my neighbors have been nice and friendly and welcoming. So I just find it, what I find probably I've noticed this most is when people ask me, oh, when did you buy a house? And for African Americans, if I say Cumminsville, they know where it is. But if I say that to white people, they're like, where's that? I'm like, oh, north side. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
So how's your experience been since I guess when you settled in and you kind of start looking around like, well, yeah, I guess I am though.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, you're well. I don't think it bothered me. It was just kind of one of those little quirks, like, oh, I didn't even think about that kind of thing, So.
How do your friends and family react to it?
And they're fine. I mean, they haven't.
Have they even noticed?
Yeah, no, it's not like my family has said anything, or or my friends. Like I said, it kind of depends. Like they might not know where it is, and then I say, oh, north side. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of a nice area, cool area. Yeah.
So have you taken advantage of anything that's offered in the community? Like, I know often they have little things at the park, and they had at one time a community council.
Yeah, I haven't really done this, so I have to admit. I kind of one of those weird work schedules, being in the arts. That I'm like, I guess like I'm always there. So sometimes I just like want to come home and not do anything else. So I have to admit, I'm kind of like the work, come home, and relax type person. Yeah. So tell me how we talked about neighbors a little bit. So your neighbors, you think they appear friendly for the most part, and so you haven't had any issues or anything shocking. I had one issue.
Okay.
Talk about that. It actually happened last year that when I got home, I just got home and it was kind of starting to get dark, and some guy tried to rob me in my driveway, which, after living here several years, it's like, what? So I was able to get away from him and call the police, and they actually did find him. I was like, oh, he's long gone, because I had to settle myself down before I even called the police to come, but I guess he was just wandering a couple blocks away, so. But we were able to resolve that. We worked out a plea bargain, so we didn't have to go through trial or anything.
Great.
But
so did you feel singled out as a Caucasian female? Did you think it was just one of those random acts?
I think it was kind of, I just happened to come home at the time and he saw me. I never got any kind of impression. This seemed kind of random to me, even kind of when we were at court. Like it wasn't like,
So did that experience change your outlook or worldview on? Because I'm sure after that you had some self-reflection.
It was kind of hard to get over that constantly looking over my shoulder as I came home and just at the door type. I think it kind of settled it. I still kind of have those moments where as I'm getting out, going around, or I did put in a better light in my driveway that's kind of motion sensor. But I try to remember, like I said, most of my neighbors are very friendly. So it was kind of took me a few months to work through all that, the anger and kind of anxiety.
But you appear that you're fine with it.
I think I'm kind of back to my okay.
But just being more aware of your surroundings.
Okay.
Just being, that's all of us. So I don't think that has to do with race, color, gender, or anything like that. Okay. Let me ask you, going back on your your German heritage, were there any celebrations, holidays that you guys focused in on more?
I think again it's more basically the traditional American ones.
Okay.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, the 4th of July, the barbecues and stuff during the summer. Yeah, so yeah.
Okay. Did you hear a lot of German speaking in your home?
We didn't. We studied German. Like, I studied some in college. My sister studied some. My brother studied it. But yeah, it wasn't like any of our relatives spoke it. I think because it was my great grandfather. And like I said, my grandfather died when I was kind of young, so I don't. I think my great grandfather probably would have spoken more. So my dad might have heard some of that. But yeah, by the time, like I said, I think we were pretty Americanized by the time.
Okay. How is physical contact viewed in your culture? Did you guys, when you greet each other, do you hug? Is it a hey? Do you come from a touchy-feely type of background or family?
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle. Like, we do give hugs every once in a while, but it's not like we're constantly hugging.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm niece and nephews, and hug them all the time. But they're kind of at the age now. It's like, no, get away.
Yeah.
You guys are that phase. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you, bringing it back to the community and the community you live in, have you ever experienced racism yourself?
I mean, not that I can remember. No one's outwardly said anything to me or expressed that, so no.
Okay. Can you recall any racism when you were growing up?
Not really. I mean, I think being white in America, we kind of don't experience as much. I have to say, the school I went to was actually pretty integrated, so it was.
So then you said you grew up in Cincinnati, and we do have segregated parts in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So what side? Because it's always about the west side or the east side.
Well, I grew up in Clifton, so I always like to say
so
it's
in the middle. Yeah, you're in the middle.
I'm in the center.
Absolutely.
And I actually went to the School for Creative Performing Arts.
Yeah.
And part of it's interesting. Everyone thinks, it's developed to be an art school, but one of the missions was also to be an integrated school. So we were kind of very self-conscious almost of like making sure you have a good mix, of,
especially where it was located
in Over the Rhine.
The historic Over the Rhine, which is Over the Rhine is a German term. Cincinnati is very German.
Yeah.
So it was located in a historical Over the Rhine, which was a predominantly African American community. Yeah. So how was that?
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. And I think, as students, we were like, why just walk around? Like, we would walk downtown, even though we would go to performances after the hall, and the school would walk there. So I can just imagine what the neighborhood's like. And all these kids walk through it. So. Yeah, I mean, we kind of got warnings every once in a while, like, be careful, and certain, make sure you don't wander around by yourself.
Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So no real racism that you experienced. In your opinion, what do you think? Because I know race relations here in Cincinnati have been tested and tried. We had that issue a couple of years back when we had that riot. So tell me, in your opinion, what do you think we can do to create better race relations here? And I don't know, since you're in the arts.
Yeah, and we struggle with that in the arts, trying to have those, because sometimes people do think of the arts as elitist, and I know we are constantly trying to think of what else we can offer, kind of having that mixture of some programs that might be, but then you're kind of like, well, we just don't want them to come to just certain programs, and and I think a lot of it's just, the more you get to know someone, the more you're like, oh, you're really not that different.
So do you think that the community, I don't know if necessarily community, but Cincinnati in a whole can, I don't know, what do you think, your opinion, what can we do to kind of mend those?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a struggle. I mean, I think, because people in Cincinnati does have this tradition of being very, I grew up in this neighborhood, I live in this neighborhood, and all my parents live, my parents, it's just like, I mean, that is changing a little bit, but I think sometimes, like, just go somewhere else for a while, meet, see other people, going back to my job. We do work a lot with Cincinnati Public Schools.
Okay.
We do education programs during the day, so I'm trying to get the students down to performances and seeing different. We do offer some, like we have a program coming up on Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
So, the schools can bring down, see that struggle. I think that is a way the arts can help, is by telling people stories, and it's like, oh, okay, seeing from their different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's kind of like, you have to kind of get out of our comfort zone sometimes, I think.
And really have those deep conversations.
Yeah.
And recognize that we all come with prejudice.
Right.
And prejudice is nothing that, necessarily bad. We look at it as very negative, but sometimes we prejudge just by observation.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah.
So we come with that, and so I'm with you. I think I hear you say that the arts can really be a big part of it. Bringing those things full center, having plays and different things like that, and inviting the public to be a part of it, to learn from each other.
Yeah. Because sometimes once you hear someone else's story and what they went through, it's like, oh, okay. You find some of the stuff they struggle with, you struggle with too. There's some things that are like completely different that it's like, oh, I never thought of that, or kind of giving that other perspective.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that the arts would be a great way of doing it, because it's not so rigid.
Right.
The art is subjective in many ways.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think that will be a great place to start. Yeah, so thank you for that. That's great. Do you think young people today have any sense of culture?
I don't know. I think it kind of depends on how strong it is in their family. Again, it kind of like, they might have their own certain traditions within their family. They might not, I don't think they necessarily think about it as culture, as what they do in their family. I guess it kind of comes down to what you want culture to be, or you find you want to be the more traditional from like a home country like Germany or something like that, or what is like American culture, what do we value and strengths. So, I think they have some sense, but they might not think about it the way we do.
Absolutely. Okay. What do you think is the best thing about living in America?
I think that pretty much that we can kind of say what I mean, even though, we might not like what other people are saying, but we do. We really think about it, that you're not going to be arrested if you give your opinion on something. And I think there are some other countries that, if you stand up for a particular position, you do get arrested. Or I think sometimes in America we take it to the extreme, and we're constantly everyone has their opinions, and
freedom
don't listen. Yeah, it can be almost too opinionated at times, but I think again it goes back to being able to do that, be able to have those dialogues, and it's not always nice, it's not always pretty, but that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward, improve things.
Absolutely, I agree. So, what would you say the worst thing about living in the U.S. in your opinion?
I think, like you said, we can be too opinionated. I think sometimes we can be a little too self-interested. I think of this whole debate about like 1% versus the 99%, the whole issue of wealth, and it's like, well, it's my money, but there's kind of issues that the income gap has gotten wider, and there are people who do struggle, and I think sometimes you can become a little too self-interested and not like, well, we have to care for everyone.
Okay. Yeah, and that was brought up a lot this year.
Well, last year
it was election year.
Yeah, that's why I thought about it, but it's kind of like that. Oh, this is mine.
So do you feel like, that most rich people feel that they don't have to necessarily share, or?
Again, I would say it kind of varies. There's definitely that segment, but I think there are others that are actually very giving, who and they're working hard. We're always like asking them for money, and I think some of them are very giving. I think they're, but it's kind of interesting. It's not always like the super rich.
They give.
You know. Yeah. I mean, you know, it kind of depends on their personality. I think sometimes it's maybe more those kind of upper middle class who are kind of almost more stingy than the super rich in some ways. I hate to like be too broad-minded, but yeah. So I think it can depend on it is kind of the person. It does kind of come down to that. Like Warren Buffett was one of the ones who was saying, yeah, we need to be taxed more, so he's one of the richest guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think in that debate, do you side on the debate of you think that the rich may need to get taxed more to not necessarily tax more, but at that is it that the higher rate?
Yeah. I guess I do kind of lean towards that because I'm kind of concerned that when you look at the numbers from like the 80s to now, that income gap has gotten wider, and I think it is harder for those in the lower income gaps to move up to kind of give things, even things like education. We talked about the cost of college tuition. I mean, when I see the numbers, I'm like, some of these schools cost more than I make in a year. Like, I'm like, how can parents,
Absolutely.
So I think there's other things that kind of feed into that.
Yeah, I believe that too, and it's a trickle down effect. And living in Cincinnati and Cincinnati public schools, most of them have a facelift or been totally rebuilt,
right.
and that's a good thing. But you can even tell in neighborhoods, it does trickle down. We have a new, is there a new elementary school down the street?
Right.
And that's great. I haven't had an opportunity to go down. Have you had an opportunity to go down there and do any type of artwork?
Yeah, actually, the organization I work with that has worked with Taylor Elementary, so they do come down to our performances, and we have sent artists to that school. So they are one of the schools we have worked with. So yeah,
that's great. That's great. So that's good, and just the whole monies and funds, and we see that certain neighborhoods get certain things, and others don't. So I guess maybe that still goes back to that. I don't want to call it elitist, but the mindset of the rich neighborhoods. You can clearly tell the more affluent neighborhoods around the city. So yeah. Okay. Well, have you or do you remember excluding others based on culture or gender?
I try not to. I can't say I've been perfect about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything I can think of. I think probably the hardest thing, I know we kind of struggle with now that in Cincinnati it's getting more Latinos, Hispanic, and the whole language barrier. And I know we kind of talked about our organization like speaks to some of these fairs, and there's a Hispanic festival, and it's like we don't have anyone who speaks Spanish, so it's not. So I think sometimes exclusion happens unintentionally. It could be something like language or what are these, not understanding. I try not to, but like I said, sometimes I think things just get in the way that I don't have certain skills and I can't help or be.
So how do you think you could be more effective in that area? Is there anything you can think of that can make you?
I think just kind of being aware of it and kind of are we doing this? Are we being? Sometimes it's kind of hard to be all-inclusive. Like like I said, working there, it's trying to do these programs. We kind of like, well, which groups do we want to target and how do we want to target? And ideally, we would target everyone and do all this stuff, but again, part of it's funding, we have so much money, what can we do? And so, it comes hard, but I think just being aware of it and constantly thinking through it, kind of eventually find a way to do some stuff.
And you're right, the Latino community here has grown, and they have a festival that they have every year. So have you guys in the arts thought about maybe going to that festival?
We have had a table, but I think, like I said, the challenge has been
the language.
And I think we've been trying to find volunteers who work with our organization who know Spanish, or but I think because Cincinnati traditionally hasn't had that, we're still kind of getting used to having a second language that we have to work with, and so I think that we have had a table at the Hispanic Festival, but like I said, the language has been kind of a barrier.
Do you think you'll see more plays or festivals or anything catered to the Hispanic community or Latino community?
There may. I mean, it's kind of one of the things it's
just to tell their story.
Right. It is something we think about, that because they are kind of becoming a larger part of our community. How can we include them? What can we do? I think so. Probably in the future, there may be something that's just kind of, how do you connect with that group who, I think because they probably feel a little isolated at times and may not. It's like, what do you want from us? I know sometimes because there's a language barrier, they may not understand why we want to invite them to something. So
So what I'm hearing you saying, that just to educate yourself and to be more self-aware on you, that I guess when you greet or meet, you can have more understanding. Have you ever thought about even learning a few words to kind of?
I know I've tried to learn languages, and unless I use it all the time, it's like try to learn Spanish or not.
Well, it's just it's a work in progress, and I think all of us have to learn some things. We can't stay in our box,
right?
Because the population is growing, and I think our community is seeing a small influx of that the Latino population as well. So pretty soon we'll have to learn it learn different languages and things by default.
Right.
I believe so. We have a large Arabic community as well. Have you guys done anything in that population? Middle Eastern.
Not so much Arabic. Actually, one of the artists we work with is an Indian dancer.
Okay.
She offers a program on Indian culture. So we have worked a little with her. So that's it. So we're always kind of, with the artists we work with, that's one of the things we do look into. It's like, what kind of are they a particular culture, and would they bring that diverse element to our programs?
Okay. So it sounds like the artists are really out there trying to seek people from different cultures.
It's a continuing conversation we
have. Great. That's great to know. So, Catherine, we're going to wrap up soon, but before we do that, I want to just thank you for taking the time out to do this for me. But is there anything else that you would want people to know about you, your culture, and what
I think someone who's like, kind of white, but dramatic.
You're kind of white.
Kind of white. I don't know. Sometimes, sometimes I'm sunburnt, but I think in terms of culture, I think I do try to learn about other cultures and just try to understand other people, because I think being in the United States, we do kind of have those mixtures, and unfortunately at times we are kind of clustered instead of being interactive. So
And how was this experience for
this
you?
was interesting. I mean, just being asked these questions kind of thinking, I haven't thought about that in a while, or and kind of interesting talking about relating to other groups in the community. That actually one of the things in the arts is we're bringing in someone to do a workshop on community engagement. How can we better our community engagement? And I think it's like, we do kind of continually always ask ourselves that question. So it's kind of like, I have to think of some of these questions as we're doing that workshop.
Great. Maybe you can use some of these questions. Right. I don't know. Right. So great. I'm glad to see that the arts here in Cincinnati is really trying to move forward and mend these gaps that we have.
And not be, I think unfortunately a lot of people think of the arts as kind of like that elitist, the wealthy, white, and we're like, no, can we really open
like I said, once again, I really thank you for your time doing this. And so it's been a pleasure.
Okay.
And I thank you. And